These are some of the most controversial episodes of Family Guy ever. To kick things off, we see how the show made fun of the physically handicapped in No Meals on Wheels. The episode begins with Peter buying the comfiest onesie he's ever seen in his life, while thrift shopping for a new suit. He loves the suit so much that he even wears it to work. Lois tells him to give it a rest on the outfit, so a disappointed Peter drags his feet over to the couch. He gets a static shock, and, having the mind of a 5-year-old, believes the pajamas give him magical abilities. To put an end to Peter's antics, Lois has the carpet removed, which leads them to an incredible discovery. Hidden underneath is a valuable 18th century Rhode Island ship token. The family sells it for 50 grand and decides to use their newfound money to open a restaurant. Things are slow at first, so Peter is thrilled when his friend Joe tells him that he and his cop buddies are looking for a new place to frequent. However, Joe shows up with his friends, who are all in wheelchairs. Peter, disappointed that he didn't get a cool restaurant, begins making up insane restaurant requirements to get them to leave. Joe is heartbroken by the betrayal and returns the next day with reinforcements. The men in wheelchairs combine to form a giant robot known as Crippletron that lays waste to the restaurant, destroying it completely. As a result, Peter is confined to a wheelchair for 2 weeks. He struggles with simple tasks and finally realizes the difficulties his friends face. With this newfound understanding, he goes to Joe's house to apologize. Joe accepts the apology and they reconcile. But to see some real monsters, look no further than the time Family Guy sent their most prominent Jewish character back to Nazi Germany in the episode Road to Germany. During a party at the Griffins, Mort desperately runs around looking for a bathroom. He mistakes Stewie's time machine for a porta-potty and accidentally activates it, sending himself to Warsaw, Poland, on September 1st, 1939. An hour passes and Mort still hasn't returned, so Brian and Stewie go looking for him in Stewie's room. Realizing what happened, they take a return pad and travel back in time to save him. The trio's celebration is cut short by the invasion of the Nazi army. They realize they can't return to the present because the return pad is out of power. They decide to flee to England, the only place Mort can be safe. They try to sneak Mort out by dressing him as a Catholic priest, but their cover is blown when he is asked to perform last rites for a dead soldier. They escape on a motorbike and eventually make it to the coast, where they steal a submarine and reach London, only to find the city is war-torn. Stewie discovers the return pad is out of uranium, and the only accessible source is in Berlin. They steal a British warplane and engage in a high-stakes dogfight against the German air fleet. They crash land and use a raft to make it to Berlin. Disguising themselves as Nazi soldiers, they sneak into a lab, get the uranium, and are about to leave when they run into Adolf Hitler. To escape, they sing a charming musical number and successfully return home. But Nazis aren't the only thing the show made light of, as the episode Peter Harassment made a joke out of male sexual harassment. While recording Stewie's first school play, Peter spots actor Richard Dreyfuss in the crowd. Peter harasses the celebrity with his video camera and submits the footage to TMZ, which convinces him that he is now a professional journalist. He continues to harass people all over town until he tries to videotape a man he confuses with other black celebrities. The man punches Peter, which breaks his glasses. Peter is forced to wear contacts, and for the first time, his boss, Angela, notices his eyes. She becomes obsessed with him, which leads to a series of uncomfortable and creepy interactions. Peter tries to tell Lois about it, but she dismisses his concerns, telling him that men cannot be sexually harassed by women. Things get even weirder when Angela starts making Peter act out her odd fantasies, like standing in front of a dusty gas station in jean shorts. Fearing for his safety, Peter quits his job. After getting drunk at the bar, Peter decides to confront Angela and finds her attempting suicide in her garage. He saves her, and she confesses that she feels lonely and self-conscious, and Peter's rejection was the final straw. Feeling bad, Peter devises a plan to help her. He creates a disguise, portraying a New York millionaire, and goes on a date with her. After the dinner, a mortified Peter tries to slip out before anything gets spicy, but Angela reveals her true identity, saying, "See you at work on Monday, Griffin." But these aren't the only struggles Family Guy's joked about, as they've made plenty of jokes about transgender people, especially in trans fat. While at a Red Sox game, A drunk Peter uses the women's restroom and is mistakenly identified as the first transgender Red Sox fan on the Jumbotron. The next day at work, his co-workers applaud his bravery, and he discovers that the company offers extra benefits for transgender employees. He decides to play along for an extra day off. Lois and Brian are upset, believing that Peter is trivializing the struggles of transgender people. Peter, however, sees himself as part of the movement and gets a full makeover. He starts acting wild at a karaoke bar, which leads to him falling into a coma. When he wakes up, his bosses tell him that they have fulfilled his letter of medical intent for sex reassignment surgery. Peter is horrified to find that the deed is done. He eventually feels lonely after his friends abandon him. He goes to a gay bar and meets Ida, Quagmire's transgender parent. Ida explains that she had to hide her identity her entire life, while Peter just stumbled into it for his own personal gain. She scolds him for treating her life as a joke. Peter feels bad for what he did, and Ida offers to help him become a better person. And if you're looking for something else that hasn't aged well, look no further than Petarded, an episode in which Peter took advantage of his mental diagnosis. During a game night, Peter is feeling down when they start to play Trivial Pursuit, claiming it always makes him feel stupid. To help him, Lois asks him questions from the preschool version of the game. Peter wins, which inflates his ego to dangerous levels. Irritated by his arrogance, Brian challenges him to take a MacArthur Genius Grant test. Peter's results show that he is not a genius. In fact, he is mentally retarded. Peter is initially bummed out, but his luck turns around when he accidentally hits Tom Tucker with his car. Tom decides not to press charges because of Peter's condition, and Peter realizes he can get away with anything. He takes advantage of this, but it backfires when he flings hot oil all over Lois, injuring her. Child Protective Services takes the kids away, placing them in Cleveland's custody. Peter tries to get his kids back, but his plan to make Cleveland look like a bad father fails, making him look even worse at the custody hearing. He makes a heartfelt plea, but the judge sees him as a monster. Lois eventually returns from the hospital and manages to get the kids back, despite the clear and present danger Peter poses to them. Hot shots. So we open with the Griffins dealing with a bat problem one night. While trying to kill it, Peter tears apart the house before the bat lands on Stewie's head. Peter, in a panic, misses the bat and hits Stewie's hand instead. Fearing his hand may be broken, they take Stewie to the hospital. While there, Stewie is due for his vaccinations. Lois initially agrees, but ends up having second thoughts after reading about possible side effects online. Brian strongly disagrees and fears the health risks. Ignoring him, Lois decides to hold a rally to warn the public, but no one shows up. Peter suggests they create a scary medical commercial, which comically ends with the slogan, "Vaccinate rhymes with 'Would you let a doctor do that to your kid?" Thanks to Peter's campaign, vaccination rates in Quahog drop dramatically, leading to a measles outbreak. The town is placed under quarantine, and everyone is forced to stay inside. Realizing her mistake, Lois insists they get Stewie vaccinated, but Peter reveals he has destroyed all the vaccines in town. Peter then breaks out in measles, which proves he was never vaccinated. Fearing for his health, Stewie tries to escape the quarantine to get vaccinated. He finds a bridge out of town and starts climbing across the underside of it. Lois and Brian arrive just as Stewie is about to be hit by an upside-down train. Thankfully, actor Sean Penn parachutes down, saves Stewie, and reveals he is carrying enough vaccines for the entire town. The crisis is averted, but the episode ends with the casual mention that 150 people died, though not anyone we knew personally. A shot in the dark. So the guys get the amazing idea of bringing Peter's couch onto the front lawn for a drinking sesh. When they go to do the same the next day, they discover the couch is gone. Peter, feeling unsafe, decides to start a neighborhood watch group with the guys. He wants the group to carry guns, but Joe reminds him that you have to be certified and go through an extensive background screening process. Peter, however, buys a gun easily and without any of the checks. Lois thinks the whole idea is silly, but Peter takes his job as an unelected vigilante very seriously. He notices someone trying to get into Cleveland's house, and after the intruder doesn't respond to him, he decides to open fire. It turns out to be Cleveland Jr., who is then rushed to the hospital. Cleveland is furious and accuses Peter of being trigger-happy because Cleveland Jr. is black. Peter denies it, and, in a comical attempt to prove he isn't racist, goes to the town square and paints himself brown. With the public now fully against him, Joe arrests Peter for the shooting. At the trial, Peter's lawyer tries to ruin Cleveland Jr.'s image by painting him as a thug. Public opinion turns against Cleveland Jr., so Peter does the honorable thing and admits that the case was rigged. Cleveland stands up for Peter and admits that the shooting wasn't racially motivated, saying, "You shot him because you're stupid. That's all I'm trying to say." With that, the two men become friends again. Turban Cowboy. Looking to add some excitement to their lives, Peter, Joe, and Quagmire decide to take a skydiving trip. Peter gets hooked on the adrenaline, but gets a bit too into his new hobby, crashing through ceilings everywhere from home to the library. He eventually forgets to open his parachute and ends up in the hospital. While laid up, Peter meets a Muslim man named Mahmoud, and the two become friends. Peter, curious about Mahmoud's culture, invites him to the clam. Joe and Quagmire find Mahmoud strange because he orders a ginger ale and doesn't want to talk about women. Peter decides to learn more about Mahmoud's culture and eventually converts to Islam himself. Mahmoud is impressed by Peter's commitment to his new faith and invites him to a hangout with his friends. The hangout turns out to be a terrorist plot to blow up a bridge. Peter finally clues into what's going on and wants to break things off with Mahmoud, but Joe uses his cop brain to devise a plan to use Peter as a decoy to stop the plot. Peter, now outfitted with a wire, figures out the date, time, and method the group plans to use. His cover is blown, and the group forces him into an exploding van to drive to the bridge. On the bridge, Peter tries to talk Mahmoud out of the plan, but he won't change his mind. Joe is then thrown in to make the save. When you wish upon a Weinstein. So Peter is approached by a scummy salesman going door-to-door selling volcano insurance priced at $200. The only way Peter can afford it is if he dips into Lois's rainy day fund. When Lois goes looking for the money for Meg's new pair of glasses, she discovers the money is gone. At the clam, Peter hears about how Cleveland and Quagmire's Jewish financial advisors have earned them a good amount of money. Peter, having no money, overhears Lois asking her mother for money and makes a wish upon a star through song to have a Jewish gentleman come into his life. His wish seems to be granted when a man named Max Weinstein shows up at his door, and Peter convinces him to give him financial advice. Max helps Peter get his money back from the salesman and even helps Chris with his math homework. Peter, amazed, decides that if he makes Chris Jewish, he'll do better in school. The father and son head to Las Vegas, where Peter plans to have a quick bar mitzvah for Chris. Lois finds out and arrives in Vegas to put a stop to the ceremony. The two argue about the ethics of it, and they escape before things get too ugly. Peter apologizes to Lois, finally realizing that people are all the same, no matter what their background or religion is. Partial terms of endearment. Peter tags along with Lois to her college reunion, but worries when one of Lois's exes comes to chat with her. It turns out Lois used to date a woman named Naomi. Naomi and her husband, Dale, reveal they are unable to have children and are looking for a surrogate. They ask Lois if she would be willing to carry their child. After some careful thought, Lois decides to go through with it. Peter is not on board with the idea and throws a fit. He even makes vague threats that could hurt the pregnancy. Lois, however, stands her ground, stating that it's her body and a wonderful thing to do for Naomi and Dale. Suddenly, they get a call that Naomi and Dale have been killed in a car accident. Lois is left unsure of what to do with the child inside of her. Meg suggests adoption, but Brian suggests the controversial option of abortion. Lois and Peter visit a family planning center and are given a rundown of the abortion process. This seems good to them until Peter runs into anti-abortion protesters outside. Having a change of heart, Peter pulls Lois out of the procedure against her wishes. Lois still has the legal right to the procedure, but she acknowledges that they need to figure this out together. They go home to talk it out, and the episode ends with a shocking revelation. Lois says that she thought about it long and hard, and they had the abortion.